This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am here at the Fine Wine Reserve with none other than Andreas Wickhoff, Master of Wine. How are you today, sir?
I'm fine, thank you.
Now you're an old friend of Good Food Revolution. We interviewed you a little while ago. This time we're going to be speaking about something slightly different. Now, the country of Austria is synonymous with white wine, much to the great work of Wines of Austria. Grüner Veltliner, and to a lesser effect, Riesling, are basically synonymous with Austrian wine. However, you do have a certain amount of plantings of red wine, and that's what we're going to speak to you about today. How do you feel about Austria as a red wine producing country?
Well, the last figures of the rather challenging 24 vintage showed that actually red wine production has been increasing considerably over the last, say, 10 to 15 years actually, and we're now looking at almost 35% of our production total of Austria is already red.
So that's been growing at quite some rate then, yes.
Yeah. So that's I think two reasons for this. One is an increase in demand, and another one is of course the climate that probably plays a role. Whereas maybe 20, 30 years ago, the vintages were probably not as suitable for making fine red wine on a consistent basis. And today, and we have to face the fact that there is global warming, and that helps us produce better red wines year after year. So I guess it's been a good path over the last years as far as the red wines are concerned.
Now, the three most planted varietals would be Zweigelt, Blaufränkisch and Saint-Laurent. Would that be correct?
Almost. Zweigelt, but there's something called Blauburger in between, which is really made for table wine, but quantity production still is quite important there. But let's say the three most important Austrian red grapes are just like what you said. Zweigelt, Blaufränkisch, St. Laurent.
Would you mind taking us through a quick 101 on each of those varietals?
Certainly.
Please?
So Zweigelt is the most widely planted red grape in Austria, a crossing of the two that I had mentioned before, Blaufränkisch and St. Laurent. Viticultural professor Dr. Zweigelt, he invented the grape in the 1920s to look for an Austrian red grape that suited our climate. So early ripening, easy to grow, loose clusters, and he succeeded. So ever since then, the plantings have grown considerably, and it's a really nice, cheerful, very approachable style of wine usually, Zweigelt. So moderate tannins, a moderate acid structure, our kind of dolcetto, our Cru Beaujolais, in somewhere in that style of wine you should be looking at for Zweigelt.
Were you aware that we did have some plantings here in Niagara?
I just had one yesterday from
Really?
Prince Edward County.
Oh, so. Really? Okay.
Yes.
No, there has been some in Niagara as well, but it's never really found a proper home here as of yet. Although, no, I think they were thinking quite carefully about the varietals that they were going to plant here when they were moving into the vinifera varietals, but it never really took off that much. Now, when it comes to the regions of Austria that are most planted with Zweigelt, where do the quality Zweigelt wines come from?
So the DSC Neusiedler See, which is just next to the lake, Neusiedler See, on the eastern shore, basically. This is really home of Zweigelt. That's where most of the Zweigelt plantings are in Austria. There are also some further down south, but Mittelburgenland and Südburgenland are more known for the Blaufränkisch, as is Leiterberg on the western shore of the lake. However, also in Niederösterreich, also in Vienna, you will find Zweigelt that is well made. Maybe there in Niederösterreich, in the Kamtor region, for example, a little bit more restrained, more savory elements, a little bit more herbaceous characters in there because of the cool climate there. Zweigelt thrives at its best, I think, in the Neusiedler See area.
Now, when it comes to the vinification of Zweigelt, are we talking similar to Beaujolais? Is there any carbonic maceration ever goes on there? And how is Zweigelt's affinity with oak?
Yes, so we don't do any semi-carbonic or carbonic maceration with Zweigelt, so you will not find that really. In terms of oak maturation élevage, I think it's very important to do that sensitively because both Zweigelt Blaufränkisch and St. Laurent are rather delicate varieties. So the moment you put too much oak in there, the more fruit will be masked. And that's not what you want to have for Zweigelt. So our producers usually use used oak barrels or big oak fermentation vats where we ferment our top wines just to give it a little bit of structure, but never too much oak influence there.
So if Zweigelt is Austria's Gamay, Beaujolais or Dolcetto, what would that make Blaufränkisch?
So Blaufränkisch has, for me, certainly that more structural component, higher acidity, tannin structure is firmer. In some years you might associate it with Syrah style, so it has that red crushed fruit element, that peppery element, coming from Leiterberg, coming from Südburgenland. Mittelburgenland might be a little bit broader in style, just have a little bit more depth in flavor. But overall, I would say this variety just has a massive potential in terms of quality, massive potential in terms of aging. The first real big, great red wine from Austria was Marienthal 1986 from Ernst Triebaumer, and is a perfect example of where Blaufränkisch can go.
When I was at Vivinum earlier this year, I was at the grand tasting, and I have to say it was the Blaufränkisch flights that impressed me the most of all of those. I thought there were some incredibly well-crafted wines there.
We are very happy to have that grape variety, and we're working very hard on it to improve the quality year after year. And I think overall Austria is on a very good path as being the #1 destination for Blaufränkisch in the world.
Moving on to St. Laurent. Some of that was planted in Ontario as well at one point, but I don't think it really went very far. How do you feel about Austrian St. Laurent right now?
So St. Laurent is also a really interesting, intriguing grape. However, we have to also say and admit it's very fickle. It's a fickle grape variety. So it behaves in the vineyard like Pinot Noir, sometimes even worse. In warm years, the pH of St. Laurent can rise quite quickly.
I see.
So you need to be really careful when to pick. You need to pick at the right time. But in more moderate years in terms of temperature, you will find some beautiful aromas that are reminiscent of Pinot Noir. So St. Laurent can also be massively interesting. However, in terms of viticulture and vinification, it's certainly not an easy one.
In the winery, it performs much like Pinot Noir also?
Correct, yes. However, we can't confirm a DNA profiling relationship to Pinot Noir, so this is most likely mother and father were extinct grape varieties there.
Right.
We just know, however, that it does behave like Pinot in the so tight clusters, susceptible to rot, early ripening. Again, a really interesting grape, but a tough one.
Now you do have a few interlopers spotted throughout vineyards of Austria, some international varietals. How do you feel they perform in Austria?
Red,
yes.
Yeah, and generally speaking, I'd say there are some good examples from also from one of our producers, where we do have Merlot in our top vineyard, Salzberg and Gabarinza from Gernot Heinrich. There's some nice Syrah being made by one of our friends, neighbors, Paul Ax. There are some Cabernet Sauvignon Merlot blends that also would work well. However, I think Austria's strength are the indigenous varieties. I think some of the international ones can be complementary to our indigenous varieties in some of the top cuvées. However, why would you look for 100% Cabernet Sauvignon coming out from Austria? I'd rather show what we are really proud of, and that is Zweigelt, Blaufränkisch and St. Laurent.
I couldn't agree with you more there, actually, Andreas. Now, how do the red varietals fit into the portfolio that you are representing today?
No, we are extremely pleased, happy with having Zweigelt Blaufränkisch around here in Ontario as well, and being able to show them. And I just came from Ottawa yesterday, and we had some very good responses again on especially the Blaufränkisch, but Zweigelt I think has a very approachable feel for also the Ontarian palate. So no, we will never be able to swamp the market, and this is not our aim and goal. We need places where there is a good wine understanding, and then our red wines will also find a home and will find consumers there.
Andreas Wickhoff, Master of Wine, thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution today.
Thanks for having me.
Bye for now.
Thank you.